Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SimplyPodLogical, a Simply Nailogical podcast.
Hello.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Cristine.
And Christine's you're looking like cute and smart. You're like, it's...
Because of my glasses?
Yeah, Christine's wearing glasses for anyone listening to
I
this.
look more like you now. What does that mean?
Oh, you look much better than me. Why are you wearing... Did your eyes get worse all of a sudden,
well,
Christine?
I can see fine. I have 20/20 vision, actually, as recently confirmed by the hospital.
That's right.
But I'm wearing blue light glasses, in part because maybe that's a good idea when you spend so much time looking at a screen, but also because it's covering my eyelashes. So, I mean, not so much. I think I need a better lens shape for my face. This isn't really ideal, but it kind of works.
Yeah, so this is the first time you're on camera since you posted a YouTube video acknowledging that you're having some health issues, I guess it's fair to say.
What's wrong with my face?
Yeah, and there was a very nice reception to that video,
Yeah.
people very supportive, and just an amazing number of people, particularly young women, I think, acknowledging that they have similar
A
issues.
skin condition, yeah. And it's overwhelming, the amount of support and advice and, not people trying to diagnose me, but just expressing their own experiences with the hardships that come along with something like a skin condition, especially when it's on your face. Like, that's not fun to have when you're trying to look at people and talk to them, and they're just like, I can't concentrate because your eyes look like demons. So
Yeah, I know one reason to make the video is like you kind of acknowledge it, get it out of the way, and now we're not going to have to talk about it all the time, right? So I think we just wanted to acknowledge it now quickly, say thank you, and then just...
And we're also back. Apologies that we skipped the podcast last week, but you know what? We're back. It's Taco Tuesday.
That's right.
Reminder that
Sorry
it is
we didn't
Tuesday.
remind you it was Tuesday last week, but Christine deserves a break sometimes.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a good thing Christine looks smart today because we're going to be talking about politics, everyone's favorite subject. But don't worry, we're not going to be moralizing, getting on our soapbox and telling you who to vote for. I thought it would be interesting if we took one of those political compass quizzes or tests to kind of show where we fall on the political spectrum. Because in our last episode 2 weeks ago, we talked a little bit about our experience in university and specifically in grad school. And a question came up from the audience about, did we think that there was a political bias in our university, in our program? And I think we acknowledge that we consider ourselves left-leaning people generally. I think we think that about ourselves. But at the same time, in the environment of a sociology grad department, there were a lot of people way further to the left than us, I think. So it did make me think, where do I actually fall on the political spectrum now? And I thought some people might find that interesting.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting topic. I think influencers try and steer away from politics sometimes. I mean, like, yes and no. Like, you don't really hear them be like, today I'm going to talk about politics. It might come up in things they tweet, but...
Well, I guess there are some political channels specifically, and there's an audience for that, right? But then when you have a guy like Casey Neistat come out, and what's the meme? He goes, Hillary Clinton,
that.
I'm voting for Hillary Clinton. The internet just tore him apart. And I guess there is a sensitivity out there about, I guess there's an expectation that people use their platform for good and advocate for certain things, and I think we have. But I think audiences are very sensitive to celebrities using their platforms to tell people how they should think or vote a certain way. I think there's a reason why that rubs people the wrong way. And I think you have the right approach, or I think I agree with your approach in that there are social causes you care about that you have advocated for, and we're not shy to share our opinions, and they can get political at times. But I don't think it's our job to tell people how they should think about certain things or how they should vote, as much as if people look up to us and see us as role models in some way or just appreciate the way we look at the world, if we share our opinion on something, it might help someone see it a certain way too without us just telling you how you should think.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's the approach that I personally like to take, although I can understand in the US it just becoming more increasingly frustrating. And sometimes I think influencers, maybe they're just thinking, it's just more direct if I just say this. So there is just no confusion anymore. And people are getting frustrated with just the state of everything. So I also see that perspective.
Yeah, based on our values, you could probably guess how we would vote. And maybe by the end of this
podcast... If we were American, which we are not. We are Canadian, so...
That's true. But, and maybe by the end of the podcast, after we take the quiz, you have an even better sense of where we sort of line up or fall on some political issues. I know in the last Canadian election, the CBC had this sort of vote compass tool that a lot of people use, where it's like, if you're not closely following politics and you just want to take a quiz to see how you feel about certain policies, and how that lines up with certain political parties, there are tools like that that are actually pretty useful.
I did that last election, and it was helpful, because sometimes you think, well, maybe I align with this party because there's this one thing on their political platform that I like, but you don't really know all the other ideologies or policies that they have under their platform. So taking these kinds of tests for yourself is helpful. And when we did our personality quiz test, a lot of people commented in the comments that they took it alongside with us. So I think that's a really good idea. So we'll put the link to this, test we're taking. We're not affiliated with them at all, and we're not saying that they're necessarily like the most accurate. I honestly have no idea. We're about to find out, or I am anyways. But you can take it alongside with us and just see how you come out too.
Yeah, you totally should. So the quiz, it plots you on two axes. So one is a left-right axis. That's mostly about sort of your economic policy sort of orientation. And then there's a vertical axis as well that is more about whether you're libertarian or more authoritarian, whether you favor a style of government along that sort of dimension as well. So it plots you as in those sort of four quadrants. So it's a pretty interesting test. Yeah, we invite you to play along with us at home. It's actually not that long.
Play along, except all of this isn't really a game, is it?
And I think, no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, whether you're left or right, communist or capitalist, fascist or anti-fascist, I think we can all agree that oats overnight is a delicious way to eat oats that are high in protein, low in sugar, and gluten-free. Got delicious flavors like, what is it, Mocha Dream, chocolate peanut butter cocoa crunch, chai latte.
I'd vote for that.
Strawberry and cream. So basically you just get this little pouch of like oats and protein powder. You put it in your shaker, add milk or a milk substitute, shake it up, leave it in the fridge, and the next morning you have a delicious breakfast.
A delicious, nutritious breakfast that is filling. I mean, most importantly, it tastes good, but I like the fact that it has enough protein in it for you, which makes you full and also like just helps you with your nutrients. I've been experimenting with different milks, so you can put any type of milk in it, and I think the most common one people go to is like almond milk or coconut milk. But try oat milk in your oats overnight.
Aren't you being overloaded with oats there?
I you don't want to overdo it, but I think it works. It's really good. I've been doing oat milk.
All right, so if you're interested in trying oats overnight, go to oats.com/simply and use code simply for 10% off. Again, that's oats.com/simply and use code simply for 10% off.
Vote for oats.
Vote for oats. Okay, are you ready for the quiz, Christine? Are you ready for your test?
I'm ready for my test. Look at me. I've never looked more ready. Where is my HB pencil?
All right, here's a little introduction. Before taking the test, please note that this isn't a survey and these aren't questions. What? They're propositions. To question the logic of individual ones that irritate you is to miss the point. Some propositions are extreme and some are moderate. That's how we can show whether you lean towards extremism or moderation on the compass. Your responses should not be overthought. Some of them are intentionally vague. The purpose is to trigger reactions in the mind, measuring feelings and prejudices rather than detailed opinions on policy.
So basically, they don't want us to waste time being offended at questions that are intentionally offensive.
Exactly. And not to overthink the question. It should be mostly a gut reaction. So we've got two windows pulled up here if you're watching at home or if you're playing along at home. So Christine, first off, we're starting off with a bang. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations.
Like I'm back in school, but the number of big concepts in this one question.
So for every question, it's just you strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. There is no option to take a neutral stance. They're really trying to get you to take a position on both of these.
Political science students know the answer. They know what the question is too.
Do you need some help here?
Help me out. I mean, help the audience out.
So this first one is a little heavy. So it's asking, if a global economy is inevitable due to globalization, should it serve humanity or the interests of the corporations participating in that capitalist superstructure?
So, okay, the way it's just being asked is it should serve humanity. So I would agree.
Okay.
Not
Christine
strongly, because
agrees.
you got to balance it, and I understand the implications. Anyways, I won't give my full.
You can give your. I also agree. So I think what they're getting at here is some conservatives would take the view that the profit motive for corporations has to come first before human values, and that's how a capitalist system works. I would like to think, and I also agree with the proposition here, that we can imagine an economic global society system that can put people before profits in some way that still works.
Humanistic economic globalization.
Humanistic capitalism. All right, next. I'd always support my country, whether it was right or wrong.
Strongly disagree. Like, who was that question for Trump supporters?
Yes, I will also strongly. Okay, we're just throwing that out there, right?
Okay, I will. Yeah, I'll keep my opinions.
Along the same lines, no one chooses his or her country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. Is it foolish to be proud of where you're born, Christine?
I don't think it's foolish to be proud of it. You just have to make sure you're not incorrectly being proud of it.
Well, I think it's foolish to be proud of it just because you were born there. But if you're born in a country that you're proud to be associated with and identified
Exactly.
with. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think this question is fair, because what about all the immigrants who have become Canadian citizens? Like, I know many of them who are proud to be Canadian. So this question would exclude
I
them.
think we're supposed to not
Sorry.
overthink these questions, but I'm going to disagree.
Yeah, I would disagree. Yeah.
Okay. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. It's weird even seeing that written, eh? I feel weird having to say that out
You just
loud.
said that, but someone's going to take that clip.
Okay, obviously that's a strong disagree.
Yeah.
Can I speak for you?
That is like
Okay.
just, yeah.
Yeah.
Go to school 101 and you will learn.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Oh, this sounds like an episode of Billions
Okay.
or Succession. Sorry, I've
What do
been
you think,
watching a
Chris?
lot of those shows about the economic downturns, like from 10 years ago.
Billy, I never saw that show. Is
It's
it good?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I don't like the spirit of this. So I'm going to disagree,
Okay.
but not strongly, because I do understand the logical advantage of what it's trying to get at.
I think we've answered the same for everyone so far.
Well, stop copying me.
I'm copying your homework. I think the enemy of my enemy is just as likely to also be my enemy as they are to be my friend.
Okay. Confusion.
Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified.
There's just no context to this.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
What do you think? Here, I'm going to go first so people know I'm not copying you. I slightly agree with this because I think our sort of regime of international law right now is kind of toothless and kind of a joke.
That's a good point. I would have said neither disagree or agree if it was an
You're not
option,
allowed.
because it just really depends. You're right. Sometimes the law itself may not make any sense, so why would we defer to it? Always, right? Things change.
You have to answer something, dear.
I'm gonna disagree,
Okay.
but like
There you go.
barely.
You believe in some sort of international order.
Sort of.
The U.S. shouldn't be able to do whatever
I'm
it
not
wants.
saying, I don't know. International law isn't the utmost thing. We should look at it anyways.
Next one. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment.
You mean fake news? Is that what this is about?
No, I don't think it's necessarily that. Or maybe. I think infotainment, as some people like to call it, is more of a symptom of a problem than the problem itself. Like, I don't like when you see shows now on Netflix. I think it may have been canceled, but Hassan Minhaj Patriot Act, is that what it was called? I don't think there's anything wrong with involving packaging politics for a young audience in a very entertaining and comedic way. The same way the Daily Show did that for us when we were younger, right? So I don't think that is necessarily problematic. I think it is problematic that most people are getting their news that way. And that was even a problem back when the Daily Show was a big thing. Like Jon Stewart will always say it's like shocking how many young people would tell him that was their main source of news.
I think you would strongly agree with this question if you buy into the moral panic of fake news ruining us. So I'm going to go the other direction, and I'm going to say I disagree, because it's not necessarily a big worry that we have information and entertainment happening at the same time. You just have to do it responsibly.
I'm going to say I'm slightly worried about it because I just am shocked how often it is the case that people seem so not engaged and uninformed about pretty basic news.
But that's a different worry. I wouldn't blame it on
that's my
entertainment.
gut reaction.
So we differ
A
on
little
this
bit.
one question.
There we go. Okay. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality.
It depends where.
I mean, it depends on a lot of things, but what's your gut reaction to that proposition?
Am I
Christine?
thinking of the states or?
I agree that in my context, in my life experience, people's class has way more to do with how our society is stratified than their nationality.
I would say that too, but I think some Americans might go the other way and say it's much more divided by nationality, like where you're from.
But we're not answering for some Americans.
I know,
we're answering for ourselves.
I'm just pointing out how it's interesting that you can totally see this through another lens. But I would agree, I would strongly agree too that at least where we are, it's
Sure. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment.
I want to say strongly disagree, but I hesitate because I'm honestly not that well versed in the consumer price index and like the impacts of inflation on markets and how that might indirectly impact people's jobs.
A government
and goods and
needs
services.
to control inflation so that doesn't lead to a
crash.
economic collapse.
So like you want to care about people and their employment and employability and jobs existing, but inflation is still important to control. You can't just dismiss it. So maybe I'll just one step disagree.
One step disagree. Okay, I'm going to copy your answer. I do feel that way. All right, next one. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. Is this true, Christine?
There's a lot of assumptions in this statement.
Do corporations not respect the environment?
I think a lot of things require some regulation or board otherwise.
You're really dancing around these questions.
Because there's not enough information.
That's the point.
But no one should have a knee-jerk reaction to any of these questions. And if
the
you
whole
do, you
point
jump to
is
conclusions.
to have a knee-jerk
But I don't
reaction.
like it. I'm a logistician, Ben.
Okay, Christine,
I need more information.
Do corporations require oversight to protect the environment?
Yes. Generally.
Do you agree or strongly agree?
Okay, yeah, I strongly agree, but it depends who's regulating
it. Everything depends on everything.
Okay, got it. I'll stop overanalyzing.
Okay.
Tomorrow I'll stop.
Here's a quote for you. From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea.
Who said that?
Karl Marx.
Really?
Yeah. That's a very like communist principle, right? Like in a fair society, a person would contribute just what they are able to, what is commensurate to their ability, and they should just receive back whatever it is their need is.
Right, got it.
Yeah. What do you think? Are you a communist here?
I don't like these questions. I am not in a box of anything. Unless it's a hollow box.
I do disagree with this. I think you got to give some people some incentive to receive more than they need. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do we work so hard?
Yeah, we don't need anything else. I don't have strong feelings about this one, but I will just say disagree to copy Ben's homework.
There you
Repay
go.
the favor.
The freer the market, the freer the people.
Oof.
I disagree with this one. I don't think just unregulated free markets leads to I guess there's a difference between a free society and a fair society, but I'm mostly concerned about a fair society.
Yeah, I don't like the spirit of this statement.
Okay. It's a sad reflection in our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. I'm being called out for liking Fiji water.
You're being called out.
I'm being called out.
It's sad. It sounds like something my grandma would say, actually.
It's something I would say. I think it's a little sad.
You think it's
as
sad?
much as I enjoy Fiji.
I don't think it's sad.
It's kind of sad that, water, like it's sad that Nestle is buying up water in countries where people don't have access to clean drinking water. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I can see that. I guess I'm just looking at it from is all consumerism bad then?
No, but I think this is a pretty extreme example where something as basic as water that falls from the sky and accumulates in lakes is sold as some premium product.
So why do you drink only Fiji water, Ben?
I just like the way it tastes.
I disagree.
Okay.
Because I think it's just silly to be sad about consumerism.
Christine just doesn't believe in emotions.
No.
All right. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold.
So who owns it?
The people, the collective people, and
How do
they'll
you
only
decide?
receive as much of the land as they need.
Oh, well, that part isn't in this statement.
I'm making some assumptions here, but I just need your gut reaction. My gut reaction is I disagree with this. I'm okay with land being something you can buy.
Yeah, I disagree because I don't know how it would make sense any other way without people murdering each other.
We're just so indoctrinated into capitalism, we can't see any alternative.
I can't picture it.
It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society.
Simply manipulate.
This is a really interesting question, I think.
So who are they? Like, what's an example of
An example would be
someone?
someone who just plays the stock market all day, or like someone who does day trading of stocks, I think is the first thing that comes to mind for me. This person is literally producing nothing of value. They're speculating on the value of other companies and potentially making a lot of money doing that. Although most
Yeah.
people who try day trading or investing in crypto and stuff like that, those people are very eager to tell you when they make some money from
Well,
doing
it's
something,
like
and they never
gambling.
tell you when they fail. Yeah, it's basically gambling.
Gambling.
Where do you fall on this, right? I strongly agree. As much as like I invest my money into things, in securities, equity.
Yeah, I would strongly agree too.
There you go. Take that, bankers. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade.
What do you think they mean by protectionism?
So I agree with this a little bit, that sometimes you just have to think about your country first, like
That's what
Donald
it
Trump's
is?
all about like America first trade, like a protectionist policy.
Like what happened recently with the steel trade, or
Yeah,
was it?
exactly.
Yeah.
So there's tariffs on steel imports or exports from Canada to the U.S.
So he was engaging in
But like we have free
protectionism.
trade agreements to avoid these things, and then occasionally people just break them, right? I just think at a certain point you do sort of have to, unless you sort of reject the idea of the nation state and any like the legitimacy of a nation in general.
I want to slightly agree, but it doesn't exist.
You want
I
to
don't
barely
know.
agree.
Agree.
All right, I'll take it.
Depends, but it can be abused, which I don't like either.
All right, next one. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders.
Strongly disagree. It's not the only social responsibility. Think about it.
You strongly disagree?
Yeah.
Okay. I agree because I think at the end of the day, a company's main motivation priority needs to be the profit motive. I think it's more for outside regulatory forces to sort of force them not to destroy the environment or, give their employees a fair wage and things like that. But I think from us having some experience like running a company or being involved in business, we know that like the first priority in like a nail polish line has had to be to make it profitable and make it work, right? But that doesn't mean we don't also consider the other social responsibilities we could have
But
as a
exactly.
company.
So this is just saying the only responsibility should be to deliver a profit. So I'm saying there are absolutely more.
Okay. My gut reaction was to agree because I think it is the main responsibility of a company. Here's one. The rich are too highly taxed.
Oh boy.
What do you think, Chris?
We
do
we
pay
kind of
too much
talked about
taxes?
this before when we were talking about Jeff Bezos and the billionaires.
So here's where it's, I know you're supposed to give your gut reaction, but the nuance here is if rich people actually paid the taxes they're supposed to pay, I think they are being taxed enough. Taxes are high enough if people pay their taxes. I
Yeah.
think there are way too many loopholes and ways for rich people or companies to shelter their taxes offshore.
Because at least where we are, I'm not as familiar with in the States, obviously, but the percentages it says like you have to pay after you make a certain amount of personal income, they are quite high.
Yeah.
And if people are assuming rich people, however you define that, is paying that, then that's a lot. And I think a lot of people would be happy to see those numbers.
Yeah. But I'm going to slightly disagree in the spirit of the question that, yeah, you do have guys like Bezos and Elon Musk making billions of dollars while they're not paying. You've heard
It's
the
like
spiel
the
before.
super rich,
Yeah. there you
the
go.
multi, like the billionaires. because they don't need that much money.
The billionaires on billions.
Yeah, no.
So do you agree or disagree, Christine? It shouldn't be stressing you out so much.
Guys,
when was the last time you took a test?
It's been years. The nail art exam.
You want to agree. I know how mad you are every time we have to pay our taxes.
I want to agree, but I feel bad.
Okay, that's
agreeing.
your gut reaction. You're agreeing.
But I don't agree that much.
Christine exposed. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care.
Oh, this is interesting because this just came up for me personally.
It did. And, I've been looking into this. And so in Canada, we're very proud of our public healthcare system. And I think my feelings about it is that a country should have a medical system that doesn't turn people away. Everyone should have access to medical care. But I think there is room for a hybrid system that allows people with means not to jump to the front of the line, but maybe there is a private clinic. Maybe if you need a very fancy procedure or are dealing with a tricky medical issue and you're willing to pay a specialist, I think I'm okay with that being something people can pay for.
But doesn't, if that exists, erode the baseline service? Because then doctors jump ship to the one that pays more, and, there's just higher wait times for the people who aren't paying.
Maybe.
Kind of like toll highways.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good analogy, actually. Yeah, I think there would be an imperative on the part of the government to make sure the public system is more than just adequate. It would have to actually be good and well-funded. Mm-hmm. So I slightly agree with this.
I disagree only because it says to higher standards of medical care.
Oh, good point.
Yeah. I don't think you should be able to pay for doctors that have more qualifications or a better operating hospital just because you can pay more. Mm-hmm. That's not what I think this hybrid system should really be about. It's more like if you want to pay more to have a fancier looking clinic or have a nurse draw your blood in a better private room, maybe. But that's not a higher standard of medical care.
Gotcha. Okay. Oh, that's very...
Gotcha. Got him.
Very Canadian of you. Here's another one. Governments should penalize businesses that mislead the public. Seems like an obvious, strongly agree from a false advertising, unethical there has to be some regulation of false business practices, right?
I agree, but also I guess I'm thinking who's lobbying the governments and are they going to be influenced? Right, because it can be abused. Everything can be abused, man. That's right. What I'm gathering from this.
Who do you trust more? Mark Zuckerberg or
the
government? President? Okay.
Or our employer.
A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies.
What?
I strongly agree with this. And I think we're having some interesting conversations right now about whether or not some of the big tech companies like Google and Facebook are technically monopolies. Does a free market, is there the ability for different companies to compete in a free market if you have a company that owns so much of the market that they can just sort of squash all the competition?
Oh, that's what happened with Rogers and Bell and the telecommunication providers recently.
Well, this has, so a good example in Canada is that there aren't many companies you can choose from when it comes to getting your TV and cable or your cell phone plan. Mm-hmm. And as a result, Canada has some of the most expensive cell phone plans in the developed world. And it's kind of shocking. And a lot of consumers just don't have the choice. So that is, one of the implications of a monopoly in a industry.
Okay, I would strongly agree. I like it when there's a real application.
Well, we just picked a very
that we can just point to and be like, okay, now I understand. It makes sense rather than just some abstract sentence.
Okay. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. Ooh. You're going to have to give a big nope to that one.
A big nope from me, nope. Too.
Big oof, big nope.
That's a big oof. Close the window. Shut down.
All authority should be questioned. All authority, Christine.
I love questioning authority.
You do? Yeah.
I agree.
Do you?
Yeah. You got to keep them in check.
I mean, you can't go through your life questioning everything, so I'm going to slightly disagree.
What? You're a pond. You're a sheep.
I'm a simp.
Bah.
An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. What's your visceral reaction? You've talked about that expression before on the podcast and how much you hate it.
Yeah, but
right?
I was using it in the context of criminal justice, and we can't just like murder someone because they murdered someone. Like that's not going to work.
I mean, there's the death penalty. It exists.
Yeah,
People do think
but
that.
it's fading out and not productive for
So
our
you
future.
strongly disagree with this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't like this logic. I don't think it's very humanitarian.
I think it's usually not the right way to look at things, but I'm only going to moderately disagree because I think sometimes you do just have to look at things that way.
You can't just look at things in a simple mathematical way all the time. Unless it's actually math, then you can. But
Like this
human
is actually
relations,
this is a good example though maybe of like where I felt like I didn't entirely fit in with like the other sort of crim students in our program, because I think the prevailing logic on everyone was everything is about like what works, what punishment works and makes sense. And that usually just means what works in terms of rehabilitating an offender, right? But I think at the end of the day, society, there's some responsibility for the justice system to fairly and adequately reflect society's values. So even if it's not in anyone's long-term public safety interest to lock someone away, if someone did something very terrible by our society's standards, I think there should be a severity of punishment that just corresponds to how wrong we want to say that is, and just have that sort of symbolic effect, even if it doesn't work from the perspective of rehabilitation.
and I can understand that. I just think when in the past, like even as a TA, and I've noticed students make that argument, they're often talking about such a tiny amount of cases, and they're trying to use that as a more general logic of like, this is why the justice system should be different, because it's not about things, it's not about rehabilitation, it's about punishing them. But the people they want to punish, if we were to do it on a case study basis, would be like the 0.1% of people in prison right now, for example. Like, we're really not talking about most people.
I don't know if that's that small. I hear what you're saying. Like, there are a lot of people incarcerated for property crimes or drug offenses.
You want to go burn down their houses? Like,
and that's crazy.
no.
And I think, yeah, I would agree with you that that's a problem. But yeah, we can't, our theory of our criminal justice and punishment can't ignore the fact that there are violent criminals who do terrible things to children.
But there was absolutely people in my class, and I'll just say this because it stuck out to me so well, who asked the same thing that you did. Like, well, why don't we just punish them? Why not eye for an eye? Like, if they killed someone, we should kill them. And so my prof so eloquently put, there's a whole other speech, but the basis was, what do you want our society to look like?
Game of Thrones. Public
well,
hangings?
I think most people, after reflecting on that, decided that they didn't want society to look like that. You know,
look like what though? Like
to
child
look like what would happen
being
if we
locked
actually
away for the rest of their life. I mean, what are we really talking about?
If the punishment is basically giving them the same punishment that they gave to other people, think about doing that.
Yeah, that is a sort of dystopian nightmare scenario.
And is that and who's going to carry out these punishments?
I'm just thinking, like, there are crimes you can commit that really deprive people from the enjoyment of their life for the rest of their lives. Even though, like, maybe you didn't kill them, you can victimize people in a way where they will never be the same.
And you can deprive those people in prison for the rest of their life by depriving them of their freedom.
Yeah.
You don't need to kill them.
But I think most people on your end of the political spectrum advocate for releasing them so that they can rehabilitate people so they can be effective members of society.
Sure, except for the 0.0 whatever percent it is who are declared dangerous offenders who will reasonably never get out of prison.
And I guess the subjective thing is you see it as that 0.1%, and I think some people see it as a bit of a broader spectrum.
But it's not. That's the thing. Like, if you actually look at the data for who's in prison for committing the most heinous of crimes, it's actually a tiny fraction of people who are in prison.
But that's because you're defining the most heinous of crimes in a very narrow way.
Well, I guess if we're talking about like murdering someone or molesting children, I don't think that's that narrow. Is that narrow?
Well,
that's
it's not 0.1%, I don't think. I don't know.
No,
I don't have
most people. Okay, we won't get into this, but I just remember from my time working in corrections data, it's shockingly, at least in Canada, at least 7 years ago, was not what you kind of think it is.
Most people involved in the criminal justice system are not there for
Yeah.
those most heinous crimes you're thinking of.
It might be violent offenses, but most of those are not like murder or homicide. Yeah.
Actually, you know what's shocking too? Here's a random stat for you. I don't have the number in front of me, but there's a shocking number of people currently incarcerated who are literally just in remand. Awaiting trial, right? So people who haven't been found guilty of anything, just waiting to get a court date because courts in Canada, and I think this is the case in the US as well, are just so bogged. There's so much of a backlog that just getting a court date, there are people incarcerated just to be determined if they're guilty of anything.
Right.
That's injustice in my mind.
That's not an eye for an eye.
No.
It's an eye for a foot. I don't know.
It's an eye for nothing.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis.
Interesting. Theaters or museums? So they're getting at like an arts and cultural.
Yeah, so I strongly disagree. I think that there is a lot of value in investing in artistic institutions. And it's been a while since I went to the symphony or even went to an art gallery, but I want to live in a society where those things are preserved and propped up, even if people aren't willing to pay for them.
Yeah. Okay.
Within reason.
Agree, but strongly disagree.
Okay. Well, okay. Schools should not make any classroom attendance compulsory. Ooh. I mean, at any age?
Yeah.
We currently live in Canada anyway. I think, when are you allowed to legally drop out of
16.
high school? Is it 16?
Yeah. In Ontario, anyways, I think. I looked it up once. I don't know why.
Oh, were you thinking about considering it, Christine?
I don't like the spirit of this because then it kind of throws to the parent and the type of parent who says, yeah, don't worry about going to school. If there is no government authority saying, no, you got to go to school, and the parent says, don't worry about it, then I worry for that kid.
Yeah, I guess it's a sad reality that you sort of need to make school attendance compulsory because there are enough kids that would fall through the cracks if you didn't, right?
And enough parents that would let them.
Yeah, but that...
So I worry for that. And it's not because I think the government should tell kids what to do. It's because I'm thinking of what is going to be the best for that child in their future. And when they're older, they can make their own decisions. So this isn't school forever. This is just as you're growing up. I do think it's important.
So we both strongly disagree.
Yes, strongly disagree.
Yeah,
I don't
'cause
like
they
the way
should.
these are phrased.
I don't like these double negatives.
Yeah.
All people have their rights, but it is better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. Ooh. All right, that's a
Strongly
pretty easy
disagree.
one. We're doing a lot of disagreeing here.
Well, give me something I like.
All right, good parents sometimes have to spank their children. Uh-oh. Christine, were you ever spanked as a child?
Yeah.
I think I was once. I think we grew up at a time where it was just sort of on its way out, the perception that spanking was a terrible thing, right?
Yeah. And I would strongly disagree in this era.
Yeah,
Although
me
I'm
too.
not a parent, so I can't say how difficult it is or how much of value it would be. But from what I understand and the impacts it has on children just from reading journal articles, I strongly disagree.
Yeah, totally. It really, it is not necessary to discipline children in that way. Like, yeah. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents.
Strongly disagree. I mean, agree.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you agree. It is
I agree,
very
I agree,
natural.
I agree. Help.
We just got so used to disagreeing.
Disagreeing, yeah.
This is, I really wonder who would strongly disagree to this question. Like, you'd have to be
A
pretty...
parent who's really controlling.
You'd have to be like super authoritarian parental style, right?
Well,
to
I know
not let your
some-
kid have any
I've heard of
secrets.
some parents who have like taken their kid's phone away and their kid is 16. I really don't like that. And I think their kid probably doesn't like that either.
Yeah,
So
and that kid
they should
probably
be
gonna
able to keep
remember that.
secrets.
Yeah. All right, next one. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense.
Guess what? It isn't
It isn't
anymore.
here. It's not a problem
anymore in Canada because it was legalized. What? It was October 17th on my birthday.
That's right.
Was it
It
2
was a
years ago? I can't
celebration.
remember. Yeah.
We're not really, we don't, Actually, we don't need to go there. I have no problems with it, but
Yeah, I have zero issues
Yeah.
with it. And I really don't think it should be a criminal offense. And it is no longer in Canada. So,
so strongly agree. Next one, the prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generations to find jobs. I kind of,
Yeah,
I think that's important, but I kind of disagree because I think it's important that you learn things in school that aren't just the most practical
yeah.
things you might
You want
necessarily
to
need for a
build
job.
your mind up that isn't just like for one particular job.
Yeah, you should be reading books and learning math you'll never use again.
But
just
it's
because it makes you a
also-
better person.
But it's also important to have some element of school that does help you prepare for a job in the future. So I don't want people to misinterpret this as just saying
Totally.
that doesn't matter, because I think it does. And maybe there should be a little bit more of it. Like co-op programs are great for that.
I agree.
And maybe even something more at the high school level that would help you figure out what you want to do.
And that was actually a huge frustration of mine in the shift from high school to university was there was so little emphasis placed on, like when it came to talking to a guidance counselor or if were talking to teachers about university programs, it always seemed like so little of the emphasis was on the ultimate destination of career. And like there should be stats or resources available to you to know like if I'm signing up for this degree in university, these are the sort of career paths and options that are open up to me, and to what extent my society, the country I live in, is there a job market for that, right?
There is some of that, because I've seen it, and I remember being shown this in first year cram, like the types of jobs that you could get with this program, and then the types of income ranges you can expect. The problem is when you're signing up for these, all of that just seems so far away, and you're still kind of lost because you don't know if you want to be a probation officer or a policy analyst. Like you don't really know what those are. You're just seeing the titles. And you have no real understanding of that until maybe you do a co-op or some real work in that field of study. So it exists. Maybe it's not that easily available. I know StatCan has some stuff on this in terms of like economic outcomes based on your graduating degree and then what you go on. There is some, but...
Okay. So where do we
wait.
fall on this, Christine? Do you want to agree slightly just because you think it is an important function?
I'm disagreeing because I
Okay.
don't think it should be the prime function. It should
Got
be
it.
one of the functions, but not the primary focus.
Got it. All right. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. You shouldn't
Was this
laugh at this.
eugenics?
People are going to get offended.
No, I'm laughing at,
It's
at how
absurd.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we both strongly disagree. And that's like, that's a really ethical, thorny issue for the person involved, right? Like that must be a
Yeah.
really hard decision to make. If you know you have something that's inheritable, that's like a debilitating, serious thing, and I can't imagine what sort of ethical consideration that is like having as a parent, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a tough spot to be in. And I don't think other people can speak for those people.
No,
So that's why I strongly disagree.
exactly. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline.
This sounds like it was written by a parent who likes to spank.
Strongly disagree.
Disagree, yeah.
There you go. And there are no savage or civilized peoples. There are only different cultures. I don't want to put my foot in my mouth here. Like, I think the question early on about like different races of people is obviously absurd and abhorrent to agree with the question framed that way. But when the question is framed around, basically this proposition is about cultural relativism. Do you think some cultures are better than others, or are they all just like different and we have to have appreciation of their difference? Do you have a gut reaction to that, Christine?
My gut is to think of different groups of people as cultures rather than one is, more savage than another.
I don't want to get myself in trouble here. I think as a human race, we can have some sort of, maybe not objective, but I think we should, as people, we should have some sort of ethical standard that could be applied to different cultures, for example, right? So just to pick a really extreme example so you don't think I'm a terrible person, if there was a culture that thought all gay people were evil and should be killed, and women are worth less than men, I don't think we just have to accept that, though, that is just a different culture. I think we should, as people who have some sort of subjective or hopefully objective standards of what an ethical society looks like, should be able to denounce a culture that has those sorts of values or does cause sort of pain and suffering and human misery in that way.
But I didn't say that, certain cultures are or aren't better than another. Like, we could still denounce certain cultures for their practices if they violate human rights.
Okay. I guess maybe it says something about me that that's the first place my head went. But just if I'm going to disagree with the proposition, I want to make it clear that that's where my head's going, not that I actually think there are the savages over here and the civilized people over here, because that's not what the world really looks like. But I just think, in sociology and humanity departments, I think you meet a lot of people who just have who believe in cultural relativism and think there is no ethical standard by which you can judge different cultures. And I do reject that. Remember, we brought up arranged marriages on a podcast a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I said I thought that was a bad practice. And I got a few comments saying, you're just some white guy, you're not allowed to judge some other culture's custom. And I just think that's a really stupid way of looking at the world. I think no matter what culture you're in, you can judge. Like, there is a responsible way of doing it, and there is a fair way of doing it, but you can judge another culture's practices if it is violating some obvious moral code, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is thorny territory. Maybe we should move on a little bit.
We're going to have another spicy comment section.
Yeah.
Simply political logical.
Moving on. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support.
I know where I'm leaning, but I also know what's wrong with why I'm leaning that way.
Okay.
So my social desirability cues are telling me not to respond the way that I want to, because we are doing this in front of a lot of people.
Yeah, actually, that's true. I feel like we're being very honest. We've probably said something really stupid already. I probably have.
As someone who is very determined and motivated to work, one thing I really don't respect is people who don't put in any work, but expect everything. Yeah. I don't like that type of person and principle. If you can't do work because you are unable to, because of your life circumstances, that's completely different. But this question is not asking about that.
But I guess I appreciate you say that, because I really want to reject the idea that like people on welfare or people who are reliant on government support, I really reject the idea that most of them are people who could be working but are just choosing not to. Right. I think that's sort of a boogeyman. You hear from the right wing.
You're usually on it because
away.
You have no choice and you have to be. No one really says, yeah, this will be fun.
But I think I agree with you. If we take the proposition for what it is, people who can work who are just refusing it for no good reason. They shouldn't
expect the support from the rest of us.
I kind of agree.
So I'll strongly agree.
Strongly?
Because that's just my personality type. You want good shit, you better put in good shit.
Even though we're both rejecting this. And you know, even to some degree, like, I like the idea of a universal basic income. Andrew Yang, shout out. And I think one of the main issues with getting widespread support for that idea would come from this issue.
But isn't it's such a small, minor universal basic income that argument doesn't really work anymore. Yeah, it's just like so you can eat. That's
why it's important to keep the amount. Like, let's say you give people $1,000 a month. There probably are a tiny number of people who would be happy to take that money and just sit around on their couch playing video games all day, and they would have no drive to do anything.
But then there's also...
most people most people don't work that way. Most people are driven to do things, need to have some purpose to get out of bed.
Yeah.
And maybe they can't work for a while, or maybe they have some artistic thing that's not going to bring money, but I think people are sort of driven to do things.
I like those people.
I like to think that.
Shout out to my people. All right, next question.
All right. When you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things.
This is a personality quiz question.
Kind of.
Strongly disagree.
I disagree. Christine strongly disagrees.
Well, you should think about it and fix it.
Here's one. First-generation immigrants can never fully be integrated within their new country.
I think this was written by a grandparent.
All right, that's a strongly disagree. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of
Jeff
us.
Bezos knows what's best for us, Ben.
I'm going to strongly disagree on that one. Yeah. And last one on this page. No broadcasting institution, however independent in its content, should receive public funding. I strongly disagree with this one.
I disagree.
Just disagree. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I like having a public broadcaster.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. All right. Should try to get through the next ones more quickly here. These are on how you see the wider society. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. I'm trying not to look through this in an American lens.
This might have been relevant, at a different time.
I'm going to agree slightly just because I think it was worrying that in the post 9/11 climate, this was definitely a concern, and we saw some very real abuses of civil liberties in the name of counterterrorism.
I'm going to disagree in my current context.
Okay. Yeah. I guess it's excessively.
Yeah, it's kind of how you look at it too.
Okay. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. My gut is to strongly disagree, even though I do see there's some logic in the question, but I just can't get on board with that.
Yeah, I disagree because there's no room to make anything better.
Yeah. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried.
What's an electronic age? What?
So,
sorry, like just living in a
surveillance
era of
is so easy. The government can probably listen in and see everything you're doing on your phone. Mm-hmm. And some people say, don't worry about it. You only have something to worry about if you're doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. I sort of reject that.
I reject that too, because it can be abused.
But I'm not going to strongly disagree, because I think there is a sort of watchman function a government should have to some degree.
I simply disagree.
Okay. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes.
I strongly disagree.
I know you do. And you know what? I do as well, but not for moral reasons as much as just pragmatic.
It costs
it's
more
just
to
not
kill
an
someone.
effective way. It costs more money. It's complicated.
More
if you get it wrong, it's even more abhorrent.
More fucked up.
Yeah.
Also, if someone did something so bad, wouldn't you rather them suffer for 30 years in a cell? Just killing them is giving them the easy way out. So I feel like people who are more emotionally driven by the decision and whether or not it's good can think about it that way and then maybe say, yeah, let him rot in prison. So that's also the other argument. Not that is what drives me, but I think that's what I've heard other people accept.
Interesting. All right. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded.
Okay, God.
Disagree.
I disagree, but not strongly, because you do need some structure somehow, right? But you know what I mean? I just don't like the way it was phrased, that you need to be obeyed and commanded, like we're some...
It's the language is throwing me off there, even if we do agree that in some sort of hierarchical system.
Right.
Yeah. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all.
Disagree.
Okay.
Strongly disagree.
You strongly disagree.
Dumb question.
Well, I'm only going to disagree a little bit, because I think there is a sort of, absurd limit. If I'm someone who thinks we should be funding the arts, I don't want to fund some guy who's just throwing stripes of paint at a whiteboard and then thinking it's some masterpiece.
Cool? What about my nail art? Abstract nail art.
Should put that in a museum.
My peelies.
In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation.
I strongly disagree.
You strongly disagree. Mm-hmm. I mostly disagree, but I think there should be some balance.
You're emotionally driven.
I'm a little emotional.
You just want revenge.
That's right.
Just
sometimes.
Like that video game, The Last of Us.
Okay. It is a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. Ooh. Waste of time? That's a weird way of framing it.
I'm going to agree.
Interesting.
But that's because it is true that there are some people, like a tiny fraction, who just after multiple assessments and programming cannot be reasonably rehabilitated.
Interesting.
And that is just from my own knowledge and experience working in corrections state.
Okay.
There are some people. It is very minor, though. Let me underscore that point.
Yeah.
It's not the majority.
All right. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist.
Aww. Ah! That's like saying like the people who mix my nail polish is more important than me.
Then strongly disagree. Yeah, I disagree with this.
Yeah, I disagree. Got it. We're all equally important.
Well, not equal.
Okay, but we're all important for different reasons.
This one depends a lot on context, right? Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers.
I would like to vomit. That's my response.
All right.
Strongly disagree.
Strongly disagree to that one.
Who wrote that? The patriarchy.
With a capital P. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries.
What?
Huh.
I have no idea what they're referring to.
I think this is sort of getting at...
like in food,
I don't know
when they try
enough
and
about
make
this to
giant
really
tomatoes.
have opinion. Yeah, or like how like the flour you eat or
Like
the
over-refining
breads
stuff?
is super over refined, or they have ways of messing with seeds so
Just
that
so they
grow
can have a
better.
better profit margin or make more. Okay,
Yeah.
now I understand.
I don't really know what this does to I'm too uninformed about this.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I have no idea to what extent they're unethically exploiting it. I mean, I
think-
might have read a headline or two, but I don't know.
I think it's safe to assume there's some exploitation going on, so I'm just gonna kind of agree with it just because that's my hunch.
Yeah, even though I can't back it up with any
Okay.
real. I guess I'll agree for the same reason. I think it's happening, but I don't really know.
Someone who's really invested in this issue can tell us in the comments what we should have thought. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity.
What's the establishment? The government?
Sure, it's whatever comes to mind. The
This-
nail polish industrial complex
The hollow
establishment.
taco. No. I mean, I don't like the spirit of this question because it's saying you just got to accept whatever the government tells you.
Yeah. I think I disagree with the spirit of the question.
Yeah, me too.
But I do think just naturally a lot of people, when they get older, I don't know if they make peace or come to accept it or just get tired of
They
fighting
just give
against
up.
things.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad way of looking
It's
at
not
it.
maturity. That's certainly not maturity.
Or is it sort of maturity in that, like, when you're a student, it's very easy to have some very outlandish political views, but then
Rebellious.
as soon as you make money and are paying taxes, maybe you do sort of change your opinion on things. I think that is the case with some people, but
Yeah.
I do reject the spirit of the question. All right, page 5. If you got through that okay, you'll find these propositions on religion
Oh my God.
agrees. All right, astrology accurately explains many things.
Should we do our birth chart
For your birthday,
for my
maybe,
birthday? Yeah.
Man.
Strongly disagree. Please don't hate me.
There are people. I mean, there are
Don't get
people in
into
our
it
life.
now. We'll save it. We'll save it.
We have friends who are into this.
Ben,
I
Ben,
do not
stop.
get it.
Ben, we don't have time. Keep your political hat on.
You cannot be moral without being religious. Bam! Strongly
strongly
disagree.
disagree.
Take that. Yeah, tell that to the Catholic priests, right? Charity is better than social security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged.
I mean, they both
Is it
can help.
better? I think I'm going to reject this just because I think this is the position some people take that you don't need a lot of government support for people.
If there's
Because
charity.
in a free market, you would just have charities.
Right, but it doesn't
helping.
work that way.
I don't think it really works that
Okay,
way.
I see what they're getting at, so I'll disagree as well.
Yeah. Some people are naturally unlucky. I don't believe in luck.
I disagree.
You got to be good to be lucky and lucky to be good. Is it important that my child's school instills religious values?
Disagree.
Strongly
disagree.
Strongly disagree. There you go. That was an easy one. That was a breeze. All right, and last page, a look at sex.
Ooh, save the spiciest for last.
Sex outside marriage is usually immoral.
Why usually?
Uh-oh.
Only if they decide.
Maybe we are the exception because, we've been in an 8-year unmarried relationship, right? But those
But
people
usually-
swiping on Tinder all day, that's the real immoral problem.
Oh my god, strongly
I'm
disagree.
going to strongly disagree with this one. A same-sex couple in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption.
Strongly
I'm going
agree.
to strongly agree with that. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population.
Isn't it? It's already legal. What are they saying?
Yeah. I do
Yeah.
think there's a lot of... the porn industry is... This is a topic we just can't get into, but like... There's a lot of darkness in that industry
yes,
and sex
for
work
sure.
in general.
Don't-
So I
yeah.
don't want to just have this attitude that,
Yeah.
porn is just all great, right? I also think it has a really detrimental effect, particularly on how young men think of sexuality
And women.
before they have any sort of real experiences.
And women who can't
Yeah.
relate to the female bodies they see in porn. But that's
But it should
another
be
topic.
legal.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah.
What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the straight. Strongly
Agree unless they're committing non-consensual murderous acts.
Okay. And no one can feel naturally homosexual. I don't even know what that means, but I'm pretty sure I strongly disagree.
Yeah.
These days, openness about sex has gone too far.
Whap, whap, whap. That's what this question is for.
Oh.
They wrote this before the song came out.
So my issue with WAP, though, wasn't about being open about sexuality, because I think that's great. So I strongly disagree.
Yes,
and I think you
me
do
too,
too.
yeah.
My issue was I was questioning whether songs like that are empowering to women when they still are positioning women as powered by their ability to use their sex to get
use,
things
yeah,
from men.
or to use men. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Anyway,
understand.
that was it. Now let's see where you stand.
Or sit.
Or sit. All right, about the political compass. So kind of like I explained at the beginning, it puts you on two axes. One is left to right, but they're suggesting it's mostly an economic dimension. But the reason that it's putting you in a quadrant is that they think the social dimension is also important in politics. So
What are the
that's the
results?
one that the mere left-right scale doesn't adequately address. So we've added a ranging in positions from extreme authoritarian to extreme libertarian. So if we scroll down, oh, I got a little certificate. Where does it put me? Oh, okay. I'm economic left, and I'm pretty far towards libertarian. Interesting. And Cristine
It's
is
almost
almost
exactly
exactly
the
the same.
same.
Maybe that's why we get along.
I would have
so
thought
well.
you would have been more economic right.
I thought so
Yeah.
as well. So I
But
kind
there
of surprised
almost
myself.
wasn't enough questions to get at that.
I think I answered a bunch of questions very strongly, like you, about how companies need regulation, and you can't just
Oh, that's why.
let
yeah.
unregulated markets fly.
But there
right?
wasn't enough about like conservative fiscal responsibility and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I am surprised to see myself so far to the left. I mean, our hunch at the beginning was that we think we lean to the left. So just someone listening, we're in the bottom left corner, basically in the middle. So we're
In the middle of
that bottom
of the
left quadrant, right?
Yeah.
So we're, almost smack dab in the middle of the left side of the spectrum, and we're halfway down towards libertarian, past the center. I guess one important point to note here is this political compass isn't a reflection of left-right in a more conventional or common sense of the meaning in terms of like political parties in America or Canada even. Like, does it help you define the center? Does it give us an example of people? I think I found, here. So it gives you an example of where some people fall, right?
where Hitler is
Yeah.
at the top.
So yeah, Hitler's a fascist who's only slightly on the right side of the economic spectrum, whereas Stalin was an authoritarian dictator
So
on the left side.
We're
of things.
close to Gandhi.
We are close to Gandhi. I found another page that put more people on there. So who are we actually close to? So like, here's an example. They have Bernie Sanders, who's about halfway in the left, kind of like we are, but he's actually less libertarian than us. He's more authoritarian than us.
So we're the closest to Nelson Mandela.
That's pretty
On
good
this
company
chart,
to keep,
yeah.
I think. We're not too close to Marxism. That's
How
way
is
on the left.
Obama all the way up there? Like kind of at the opposite.
That's very interesting because, so here's what
Did
I
he
think
really
that's
take
getting
this
at.
test, or did someone just kind of plot in?
I think they're trying to plot these people
Yeah.
on here, but I think one of the premise of one of the arguments of the people who put this test together is that they sort of see that there isn't a lot of distinction between major political parties in the US in terms of where they fall on this compass, right? So Bush, yeah, he is farther to the right and a little more authoritarian. But if we're looking at this compass as an attempt to place you on like a political theory spectrum that isn't Americanized or American-centric, Obama is actually slightly to the right of center.
Basically, all successful, by successful, I mean like actually got the presidency in the States are all in that upper right box.
Right corner, for sure.
Just by
like
nature
of
them getting there and being able to maintain that position. So I guess that kind of makes sense in that sense, right?
But like if Bernie Sanders had been a successful candidate, he actually would have been a guy on the left side of the aisle. And that's why people were so excited about Bernie Sanders, right? He finally represented, I think, a lot of left-leaning people's views that Obama does seem like an incredibly decent person. But when he was campaigning on hope and change at the beginning, before he was elected in his first term, I think people were hoping he would be something he ultimately wasn't.
So you're a little surprised by your results just because you thought you'd be a little more
I thought I would be closer to the center.
The economic stuff, right?
I think I was just left of center. I think I totally reject, like, I don't lean to the right at all when it comes to social issues, I want to say.
Yeah.
But I felt like I'm surprised I'm not closer to the authoritarian end of the spectrum a little bit, to some degree. Some of the answers I gave about foreign policy, things like that. Are you surprised about where you ended up?
No, I'm exactly in the middle of the green box.
Yeah, and you're good with that? We're libertarian left then.
That makes sense to me.
Okay.
But also not the most extreme libertarian left. I think that's also important, is I'm in the middle of that group.
Yeah. Because
I am definitely someone who doesn't really go to the extremes of any mindset. I like to assess everything and consider it. And I take a conservative approach in my opinions about something, not in conservatism, but just in whatever the school of thought it is I believe in. I don't go to the extremes of it.
Yeah, you're a pretty measured person in all things. Yes. Yeah. Interesting. I guess that's okay. We probably said something really stupid on one of these questions. I should just preemptively apologize. But that's the way the cookie crumbles today, Cristine.
What is important, though, that regardless of where you are in whichever box, is that if you can and have the ability to vote in upcoming elections, like in the States, a big one is coming up. I don't know if you've heard, but I am the Simply Political respondent on this episode to tell you to vote.
Yeah, like at the beginning of this podcast, we sort of talked about how we don't think it's our responsibility or fair of us to tell you how you should feel about things. But I think we're comfortable telling you that, in the interest of a democratic society functioning well, it's really a shame when people who can, and especially young people, don't vote, right? I actually lived in Australia for a few years when I was younger. You know what's interesting there is that it's actually illegal not to vote. I think they fine people for not voting, but I think just that threat works well enough that people just vote, and I think they're given adequate time to actually get off work and vote and things like that. And I actually wonder if that is something we should embrace more in North America. We don't have that here in Canada, and I'm fairly certain that's not the case in the States. And when you look at how many people actually vote in elections, it's always really depressing, especially when you get an outcome that you're not happy with. When you think of that guy got 50% of the vote, but he only got 50% of the vote of the 30% of people who actually voted, right? That's always a real bummer.
I'm not opposed to the idea of making it a legal requirement to vote, but you can't impose that without, I think, two things. The first is you have to make it accessible and available and reasonably possible to vote in a fair and safe way, and not travel 2 hours or not make it hard to vote, or maybe you have to open voting online if that makes sense for those people. And then the other reason is if someone goes to vote, they still need to be able to choose that they are not voting for any of the listed candidates. So you can choose to abstain to vote.
Yeah.
As long as you have that choice, because it is also your prerogative if you don't want to pick any of these people. But it is important just from a data perspective to get that number of people who are saying, I abstain from voting. And you should be allowed to abstain as well, but not abstain, just be like
staying home
and not filling it out, because it is important to have that data too.
Recorded that.
Because
Yeah,
what if there's a
someone
whole
just
bunch of
rejected
people
all the
abstaining?
options.
Maybe that can have some impact in the actual outcome of how they weigh the votes for the popular vote.
I'm not sure if Elections Canada reports on it. I think they did, at least at one point, but they used to give the number of how many people were just deliberately spoiling their ballot.
And I think that says something. If that number goes up, and that's important.
And I think you make a really good point about making it easy to vote. And that's why it is incredibly alarming when you have a political party actively discouraging people from voting and trying to make it harder to vote by mail. I'm not going to make some statement about you're a bad person for being one side of the political aisle or the other, but I think you just have to acknowledge to yourself that if you do lean in that direction, to vote for someone who is trying to make it harder for people to participate in the political process is a really disgusting thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, what's the voting age? Is it 18?
It's 18 here, yeah.
Yeah. You should vote. It's an exciting thing to vote for the first time.
Is it
right?
18 in the States too? I have no idea.
I think it's 18, right?
But you can't drink until you're 21? How does that work?
You know what? There should be a limit on like you should lose your ability to vote at a certain age.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. One of my grandmas shouldn't be allowed to vote anymore. So,
you know what I mean? Like, if you're like a few years away from death, should you really be voting on the future of a country?
If you're not going to be around, oh my God, Ben.
I don't know who gets to decide that age.
That's incredibly morbid, but from a very practical point of view,
there's something to this,
There
right?
is something to think about.
Maybe if you're past the average life expectancy, you should just not be able to vote.
I think that's like 86 for men, maybe.
Oh, it's not that high. It was like 70.
Or maybe I'm thinking of women. It's much higher for women.
It was
so women can
72
vote
for
later
men.
for longer.
That's right. I'm okay
We'll
with
take
that.
away the men's right to vote. How about that? When you hit 70, you're done.
All right, deal. We could run a political campaign just on that idea. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Apologies to Dr. Mike. We were going to have him on today, but
instead I talked to him myself over Zoom the other day.
That's right. What a sweetheart.
He was very kind. Also, I didn't want to turn this into like a YouTube collab, but I just want to thank him publicly, even though he's not expecting me to. We did speak about my medical conditions, what's going on in my face, and he was super helpful, just telling me mostly what to ask my doctors and talk to my own team here.
That's awesome. I really appreciate that he was willing to do that just on a private basis.
I didn't even have to pay. I said, how much for the session? And he said, it's free. Don't worry about it.
Was he wearing a lab coat on the Skype call?
No, he was wearing a shirt with a hashtag. Okay. And I can't remember what it is now.
That guy, he's great. I really appreciate it. If you don't know who we're talking about, Dr. Mike runs a YouTube channel, but he's also
he's a real doctor,
GP.
But he has a YouTube channel about like medicine and tips that he makes accessible to the average person to listen to.
And he makes really great educational content that's actually entertaining and
infotainment kind of. Yeah.
He's in a small club, I think, with you of people who have successful YouTube careers who have maintained pretty serious jobs as well, right? So there's kind of a parallel there. There aren't many of you who...
We did talk about that for a little, about just like, oh, it's so crazy. This is the first time we're connecting, because it's hard to find other YouTubers who are of that nature and have so many subscribers or such a big following. Like, it just doesn't happen.
All right, we'll try to get you on another time, Dr. Mike.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. You just got your reminder that it's Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday.
Don't forget to vote. If you can vote in your next election, whether it's federal, national, provincial, state, municipal, just participate in your political process. How about that?
Yeah. Even if it's your first time, then it's a cool learning experience.
That's right. Very cool. Super cool.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in.
We'll see y'all later.
See y'all later. Bye. Bye.